The elevator doors opened, and Elion Cross knew he was about to lose everything. His son clung to his chest, small fingers twisted in the fabric of his work vest. Milo's forehead burned against his collarbone. Fever hot, dangerously hot, and every breath the child took rattled like coins in a jar. Elion's jaw tightened as he stepped into the hallway, his free hand gripping the security badge that suddenly felt like a death sentence. The building didn't care that Milo's daycare had called him unreliable. Didn't care that his landlord had taped an eviction notice to his door this morning. Didn't care that the nearest clinic wanted $200 upfront just to see a sick child. Elion pressed his lips together and kept walking. The overhead lights buzzed in that specific frequency that made his teeth ache. His shoes squeaked against polished marble. Somewhere behind him, voices echoed. Security personnel, maybe management. He didn't turn around. Turning around meant eye contact, and eye contact meant questions he couldn't answer. Milo whimpered, and Elion's hand moved instinctively to the back of the boy's head, fingers threading through damp curls. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. The main corridor stretched ahead like a throat. Elion had walked this path every day for 8 months. But today the walls seemed closer, the air thicker. He could smell his own sweat mixing with the sharp antiseptic scent that clung to everything in this building. His heart hammered against his ribs, and he wondered if Milo could feel it. A woman in a tailored suit passed him, her heels clicking in perfect rhythm. Her eyes flicked to Milo, then to Elion's face. Her expression shifted, something between pity and disgust, and she kept walking. No one stopped to help. No one ever did. Elion's workstation sat in the back corner of the logistics floor, tucked between filing cabinets and a water cooler that hadn't worked in 3 weeks. He'd chosen that spot specifically because it was out of sight, easy to disappear into. Now he lowered himself into the chair, adjusting Milo so the boy could rest against his shoulder. The fever made Milo's small body feel like a furnace. His computer screen blinked to life, and Elion's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He had 17 tasks to complete before noon. 17 tasks, and a child who couldn't stop shaking in his arms. The first alert popped up at 9:47 a.m. Unauthorized personnel in Sector 4. Elion's breath caught. His eyes darted to the timestamp. Sector 4. That was 3 floors up in the executive wing. He pulled up the security feed, his fingers moving faster now, and his stomach dropped. Milo had wandered off. He didn't remember the boy slipping away, didn't remember loosening his grip. But there on the screen, grainy and black and white, was his son. Small, feverish, stumbling down a hallway that no child should ever see. Elion was on his feet before the thought finished forming. His chair hit the wall behind him. He didn't care. He shoved past 2 coworkers, their protests fading into background noise, and hit the stairwell at a dead run. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. He took the steps 2 at a time, one hand on the railing, the other clutching his badge like a talisman. The stairwell smelled like concrete and old coffee, and every floor felt like a mile. When he burst through the door to Sector 4, the silence hit him first. No alarms, no shouting, just quiet. Milo stood at the end of the hallway, one small hand pressed against a door that shouldn't have been open. The boy's head tilted, his eyes wide and glassy with fever, staring at something inside the room. Elion's legs moved before his brain caught up. He crossed the distance in seconds, his hands reaching for his son, ready to scoop him up and run. Interesting. The voice came from behind him, low and smooth, and Elion froze. He turned slowly, Milo now pressed against his chest, and his breath died in his throat. 3 men stood in the hallway, identical, tall, with sharp suits and sharper eyes, their platinum hair catching the fluorescent light in a way that made them look almost unreal. They didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Elion knew who they were. Everyone knew. The Virex triplets didn't visit the lower floors. They didn't acknowledge people like him. They existed in boardrooms and private meetings, their names whispered in break rooms like curses. And now they were staring at him. One of them stepped forward, His movements were controlled, precise, like a predator testing the air. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Elion could smell expensive cologne mixed with something darker, something that made his instincts scream. The alpha crouched, his knees bending smoothly, until he was eye level with Milo. Elion's grip tightened. His pulse roared in his ears. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Wanted to speak, but his voice had never worked, not since he was 14 and his vocal cords gave up trying. Milo stared at the alpha, his small face flushed with fever, and then, impossibly, the boy smiled. His tiny hand reached out, fingers curling into the fabric of the alpha's sleeve. The hallway held its breath. Elion's heart slammed against his ribs. Security cameras blinked red in the corners. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened and closed. But none of it mattered because the alpha hadn't moved, hadn't pulled away. His eyes were locked on Milo, and something in his expression shifted. Something Elion couldn't name. The second triplet spoke, his voice colder than the first. "Who authorized your presence here?" Elion's hands trembled. He fumbled for his phone, fingers clumsy and desperate, and typed out a message on the screen. His throat worked uselessly, his jaw tight with frustration. He turned the phone around. "My son was sick. I had no choice." The third triplet tilted his head, his gaze moving from the phone to Elion's face, lingering on his mouth, his neck, the pulse that hammered visibly beneath his skin. "No choice," the man repeated, his tone unreadable. Milo's grip on the first alpha's sleeve tightened, and the man, impossibly, let him. Elion's mind raced. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading since the eviction notice, since the clinic turned him away, since he'd made the choice to bring Milo into this building. He was going to lose his job, lose his son, lose everything. But the alpha in front of him didn't look angry. He looked curious. The man reached up slowly, his hand moving toward Milo's face, and Elion's body tensed, ready to bolt. The alpha's fingers brushed Milo's forehead, checking his temperature with a gentleness that didn't match the coldness in his eyes. "He's burning up," the man said quietly. The second triplet moved closer, and Elion's back hit the wall. There was nowhere to go, no way out. His breathing came in short, shallow bursts, and he hated how weak he felt, how small. "Take the day off," the first alpha said, his hand still resting on Milo's head. "With pay." Elion blinked. His brain struggled to process the words. "We'll handle the arrangements," the second triplet added. His tone left no room for argument. The third one hadn't stopped staring. Elion's fingers moved across his phone screen, shaking so badly he had to retype the message twice. "Why?" The first alpha stood slowly, his height suddenly oppressive in the narrow hallway. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, sleek, black, with a number printed in silver. He held it out. Elion stared at it, his mind screaming that this was wrong, that nothing in his life had ever been this easy, that there had to be a cost. Milo's hand reached for the card, his small fingers closing around it before Elion could stop him. The alpha smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Go home," he said. "Rest. We'll be in touch." Elion wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers. But his body was already moving, already turning, already carrying Milo toward the stairwell because every instinct he had was screaming at him to run. He didn't look back. Not when he heard their footsteps behind him. Not when the elevator doors closed. Not when he stepped out into the afternoon sun and felt the weight of their eyes finally lift. Milo fell asleep on the bus ride home, his small body finally still, the fever breaking just enough to let him rest. Elion stared out the window, the black card heavy in his pocket, and tried to ignore the way his hands still shook. That night, after Milo was tucked into bed, after the dishes were washed and the lights turned low, Elion's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the notification. The message was short, simple, terrifying. "We need to talk about your child. What would you do if powerful strangers suddenly took an interest in your family?" Elion didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, his phone face down on the chipped surface, and watched the minutes crawl past on the microwave clock. 2:17 a.m., 2:18 a.m., 2:19 a.m. His fingers drummed against his thigh, a nervous rhythm he couldn't control. Milo's breathing was steady now, soft and even from the bedroom. The fever had broken around midnight, and the boy had finally stopped tossing and turning. That should have been enough. That should have let Elion relax. But the message sat in his phone like a splinter under his skin. "We need to talk about your child." He flipped the phone over. "Read it again." The words didn't change. At 6 a.m., he gave up on sleep entirely and started getting ready for work. His hands moved through the motions automatically: shower, clothes, coffee he didn't drink. Milo woke up asking for cereal, his small face still pale but smiling, and Elion forced himself to focus on that instead of the growing dread in his chest. The daycare said they'd take Milo today. No explanation for why they'd refused yesterday, just a chipper voicemail saying they had an opening. Elion didn't trust it, but he didn't have a choice. He dropped Milo off at 7:30 a.m. and made it to work by 8 o'clock. The building looked the same, smelled the same, but something had shifted, and Elion felt it the moment he stepped through the doors. People stared, not openly, not obviously, but their eyes followed him as he walked to his workstation, their conversations stuttering when he passed. A woman from accounting whispered something to her coworker, and they both looked away quickly when Elion glanced up. He sat down, logged into his computer, and tried to pretend everything was normal. At 9:15 a.m., his supervisor appeared. Marcus Holloway was a middle-aged beta with thinning hair and a permanent expression of mild irritation. He'd barely spoken to Elion in 8 months, their interactions limited to performance reviews and scheduling conflicts. Now he stood beside Elion's desk, his hands clasped behind his back, and cleared his throat. Elion looked up, his fingers already moving toward his phone. "You've been reassigned," Marcus said. His voice was flat, rehearsed. "Effective immediately. Report to HR for your new schedule." Elion's chest tightened. He typed quickly, his jaw set. "Reassigned where?" Marcus didn't meet his eyes. "HR will explain everything." He walked away before Elion could respond. The HR office was on the 3rd floor, tucked between conference rooms and executive bathrooms. Elion had only been there once, during his initial onboarding, and the memory made his stomach turn. The receptionist, a beta woman named Shanice, smiled when he walked in. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes, practiced and empty. "Mr. Cross," she said, her voice too bright. "They're expecting you." She gestured toward a door on the left, and Elion's legs felt heavy as he crossed the room. Inside, the office was cold, sterile. A single desk sat in the center, and behind it was a man Elion had never seen before. He wore a suit that cost more than Elion's rent, his dark skin smooth and his expression unreadable. "Sit," the man said. Elion sat. The man slid a folder across the desk. "Your new assignment. Flexible hours. Increased pay. Access to company childcare services." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Effective immediately." Elion stared at the folder. His hands didn't move. "Any questions?" the man asked. Elion's fingers trembled as he reached for his phone. He typed slowly, his mind racing. "Why?" The man leaned back in his chair, his expression unchanged. "You've been identified as a valuable asset. The company wants to ensure your continued success." The words were smooth, rehearsed, wrong. Elion's thumb hovered over the screen, but before he could type another question, the man stood. "That's all," he said. "You're dismissed." Elion left the office with the folder clutched in his hands and a growing sense that he'd just signed something without reading the fine print. The rest of the day passed in a blur. His new workstation was on the executive floor, quieter, cleaner, with a view of the city that made his old desk feel like a closet. No one spoke to him. No one acknowledged him. But he could feel their eyes always watching. At 3 p.m., one of the triplets appeared. Elion didn't hear him approach, didn't notice until the man was standing directly behind him, close enough that Elion could feel the heat radiating off his body. He turned slowly, his breath catching. The alpha didn't speak. He just stood there, his pale eyes locked on Elion's face, his expression unreadable. His presence filled the space, oppressive and overwhelming, and Elion's instincts screamed at him to lower his gaze, to submit, to make himself small. But he didn't. The alpha's lips twitched, almost a smile. Settling in? Elion's fingers moved to his phone, but before he could type, the alpha stepped closer. Too close. Elion's back hit the desk. His pulse roared in his ears. The alpha's scent was everywhere now. Cedar and smoke and something darker, something that made his skin prickle. "You don't need to be afraid," the alpha said softly. His hand reached out, and Elion flinched, but the man didn't touch him. Instead, his fingers hovered near Elion's elbow, close enough to feel but not quite making contact. "We're not your enemies." Elion's jaw tightened. He forced himself to breathe, forced his hands to stop shaking, and typed out a response. "Then what are you?" The alpha's eyes flicked to the screen, and something shifted in his expression. "Interested." Before Elion could respond, the alpha stepped back, his movements smooth and controlled. He turned and walked away, his footsteps silent on the carpet, and Elion was left standing there, his heart pounding and his mind spinning. That evening, after he picked Milo up from daycare and made dinner and tucked the boy into bed, Elion finally allowed himself to collapse onto the couch. His phone buzzed. He stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. Another message. Same unknown number. "You're doing well. Keep it up." Elion's hands tightened around the phone. His chest felt tight, his breathing shallow, and he wanted to scream, wanted to throw the phone across the room, wanted to demand answers. But all he could do was sit there, staring at the screen, and wonder what he'd walked into. The next morning, he found a gift basket on his doorstep. Expensive food, toys for Milo, a note that read, "For your continued success." No signature. Elion carried it inside, his hands trembling, and locked the door behind him. Milo was still asleep. The apartment was quiet, and somewhere in the city, 3 men were watching. Would you trust people who suddenly made your life easier without asking for anything in return? The calls started on Tuesday. Elion was halfway through his morning coffee, reheated from yesterday because he couldn't afford to waste anything, when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, expecting a text from daycare or a reminder about Milo's doctor's appointment. Instead, it was a number he didn't recognize. He let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Elion stared at the phone, his jaw tight, and finally answered. He didn't speak. Couldn't speak. Just held the phone to his ear and waited. "Mr. Cross." The voice was professional, clipped. "This is Amanda Reeves from Child Protective Services. We received a report regarding your son's welfare and need to schedule a home visit. Please call back at your earliest convenience." The line went dead. Elion's hand shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, his mind racing. CPS. Someone had called CPS. Someone had reported him. Milo wandered into the kitchen, still in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He climbed into Elion's lap without asking, his small body warm and solid, and Elion wrapped his arms around him tightly. Too tightly. Milo squirmed, and Elion forced himself to loosen his grip. At work, things got worse. His new schedule was flexible, they'd said. Supportive, they'd said. But every time Elion tried to leave early to pick up Milo, someone appeared with a new task. Urgent, time-sensitive, critical. And always one of the triplets was nearby. Not speaking. Not interacting. Just watching. On Wednesday, the middle triplet, Cade, Elion had learned his name from overheard conversations. Sat down across from him in the break room. Elion had been eating lunch alone, his phone propped against a water bottle, scrolling through job listings he couldn't afford to apply for. Cade didn't ask permission. He just sat, his long legs stretched out under the table, and pulled out his own lunch. Expensive, probably catered. Elion kept his eyes on his phone. "Your son," Cade said after a moment. His voice was quieter than his brother's, softer. "Milo, how's he feeling?" Elion's fingers stilled. He looked up slowly, his expression carefully blank. Cade's pale eyes met his, and for a moment, Elion thought he saw something genuine there. Concern, maybe, or curiosity. He typed out a response. "Better. The fever's gone." Cade nodded. "Good. Kids bounce back fast." He paused, his gaze dropping to Elion's lunch. A sandwich made from bread that was one day away from moldy. "You should eat more." Elion's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. Cade leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "We have a cafeteria upstairs. Executive level. You're welcome to use it." Elion typed quickly. "I'm fine. Are you?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded, and Elion forced himself to hold Cade's gaze. His heart pounded, his instincts screaming at him to look away, to submit, but he didn't. Cade smiled faintly. "You're stubborn. I like that." He stood, picked up his lunch, and walked away. That afternoon, Elion found a meal card on his desk. Preloaded. No note. He stared at it for a long time before shoving it into his bag. The home visit from CPS happened on Thursday. Amanda Reeves was a tired-looking woman in her 40s, with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much. She walked through Elion's apartment slowly, her clipboard clutched in one hand, checking off boxes with mechanical precision. The refrigerator. The bathroom. Milo's bedroom. Elion stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, and watched her work. His phone was in his pocket. Ready? But she hadn't asked him any questions yet. Finally, she turned to face him. "The report said your son was brought to work in an unsafe environment. Can you explain?" Elion pulled out his phone. His fingers moved quickly, the words forming faster than his thoughts. He was sick. Daycare refused him. I had no other option. Amanda's expression didn't change. And now, daycare takes him. I have flexible hours. Convenient. Her tone was flat. Elion's chest tightened. Amanda glanced at her clipboard, then back at him. "I'll need to speak with your employer. Verify your current situation." She left 20 minutes later, and Elion locked the door behind her with trembling hands. That night, Milo asked a question. They were sitting on the couch, Milo's small body tucked against Elion's side, watching a cartoon neither of them was really paying attention to. The boy shifted, his head tilting up, and his hands moved in the sign language they developed together. Simple, imperfect, theirs. Why are people being nice now? Elion's breath caught. He stared at his son, at the too serious expression on his small face, and his throat tightened. He signed back slowly. "I don't know." Milo frowned. "Is it bad?" Elion wanted to lie, wanted to tell him everything was fine, that the nice people were just nice, that the world wasn't as cruel as Elion knew it to be. But Milo was smart. Too smart. Maybe Elion signed. Milo's small hand found his, squeezing tightly. "We'll be okay." Elion pulled him closer and prayed the boy was right. On Friday, everything changed again. Elion was at his desk when Cade appeared. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself, just stood there, his expression unreadable, and gestured toward the elevator. "Come with me." It wasn't a request. Elion's pulse spiked. He grabbed his phone, his mind already racing through worst-case scenarios, and followed. The elevator ride was silent. Cade stood too close, his presence overwhelming in the small space, and Elion focused on the numbers ticking upward. 5th floor, 6th, 7th. The doors opened on the executive level. Elion had never been this high before. The carpet was thicker here, the air cleaner, the silence heavier. Cade led him down a hallway lined with dark wood and frosted glass, and stopped in front of a door at the very end. He opened it without knocking. Inside, the other 2 triplets were waiting. The room was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, leather chairs, a table that could seat 20. But all Elion could focus on was the 3 men standing in the center, their identical faces watching him with varying degrees of intensity. The first triplet, Darius, Elion had learned, gestured to a chair. "Sit." Elion sat. Cade closed the door behind them. The third triplet, Jace, the coldest of them, leaned against the table, his arms crossed. "We need to discuss something." Elion's fingers moved to his phone, but Darius held up a hand. "Just listen," he said. Elion's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Darius exchanged a glance with his brothers, and something unspoken passed between them. Then he turned back to Elion, his expression softening just slightly. "There's been a discrepancy in your employment records." Elion's chest tightened. "Data irregularities," Jace added. His tone was clinical. "Access logs that don't match. Files opened from your account that you claim you never touched." Elion's mind raced. He grabbed his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. "I didn't touch anything. I don't even have access to those files." Darius nodded slowly. "We believe you." Elion blinked. "But," Cade said from behind him, his voice quiet, "someone did. And they used your credentials." The room felt colder suddenly. Elion's hands shook. "Why are you telling me this?" Darius stepped closer, and Elion's instincts screamed at him to move, to run, but he stayed frozen in his chair. "Because," Darius said softly, "we think you're in danger." Before Elion could respond, the door burst open. Milo stood in the doorway, his small face streaked with tears, and Elion's world stopped. The boy ran toward him, and Elion caught him, pulling him into his arms, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. "How?" Elion started to type, but Darius was already moving. The Alpha crossed the room in 2 strides and positioned himself between Elion and the door, his body tense, his eyes scanning the hallway. Jace's hand went to his phone. Cade moved toward the windows. "He was supposed to be at daycare," Darius said, his voice tight. "How did he get here?" Elion didn't have an answer. His hands shook as he held Milo, his mind spinning, and the boy clung to him like a lifeline. Cade turned from the window, his expression grim. "We need to move. Now." Darius's jaw tightened. He looked at Elion, and for the first time, something like fear flickered in his eyes. "You're coming with us." It wasn't a question. "Do you trust the people who claim they're protecting you, or the ones who put you in danger?" Elion didn't have time to argue. Darius's hand wrapped around his arm, not rough but firm enough to leave no room for debate, and pulled him toward the door. Milo clung to Elion's chest. His small fingers twisted in his father's shirt, and Elion's mind screamed at him to resist, to demand answers, to do anything except follow these men deeper into a building that suddenly felt like a trap. But Milo was shaking, and Elion didn't know who else had sent his son here. They moved fast. Cade led the way, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and clipped as he barked orders to someone Elion couldn't see. Jace brought up the rear, his eyes scanning every corner, every doorway, like he expected an attack at any moment. The hallway blurred. Elion's pulse roared in his ears. Milo's breathing hitched, small gasps that punched holes in Elion's chest, and he tightened his grip on the boy. They didn't take the elevator. Instead, Cade shoved open a door marked stairs. Authorized personnel only, and gestured them through. The stairwell was concrete and cold, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, and their footsteps echoed like gunshots. Down, down, down. Elion's legs burned. His arms ached from holding Milo, but he didn't stop. At the bottom, Cade pushed through another door, and they spilled into an underground parking garage. The air smelled like gasoline and rubber, and the lights here were dim, casting long shadows across rows of expensive cars. A black SUV waited near the exit, its engine already running. "Get in," Darius said, his hand still on Elion's arm. Elion hesitated. His eyes darted between the vehicle and the men surrounding him, and every instinct he had screamed that this was wrong, that getting into that car meant giving up control. Milo whimpered, and the sound broke him. Elion climbed into the back seat. Darius slid in beside him, and Cade took the driver's seat. Jace rode shotgun, his phone still pressed to his ear, his voice too quiet for Elion to hear. The doors locked. The SUV pulled out of the garage, tires squealing, and Elion's stomach dropped as they merged into traffic. For a long time, no one spoke. Elion sat rigid in his seat, one arm wrapped around Milo, the other clutching his phone. He wanted to type out 100 questions, wanted to demand they stop the car and let him out, wanted to scream. But his throat was useless, and his voice had never worked when he needed it most. Finally, Darius broke the silence. "Your son," he said quietly, his eyes on the road ahead. "Who picked him up from daycare?" Elion's fingers moved across his phone screen, shaking so badly he had to retype the message twice. "I don't know. He was supposed to stay there until I got off work." Darius's jaw tightened. He glanced at Jace, and something unspoken passed between them. "Someone signed him out," Jace said without turning around. "Used your name. Forged your signature." Elion's blood ran cold. "Who?" "That's what we're trying to figure out." Milo shifted in Elion's arms, his small face tilted up, and his hands moved in the sign language they'd created together. "Are we safe?" Elion's throat tightened. He signed back, slow and careful. "I don't know." Milo's eyes filled with tears, and Elion pulled him closer. The SUV pulled into an underground garage 20 minutes later. Not the same one they'd left. This one was smaller, darker, with only a handful of cars and a single elevator at the far end. Cade killed the engine. "Stay close." They moved as a unit again, Darius's hand on Elion's shoulder, Jace scanning the shadows, Cade leading them toward the elevator. The doors opened immediately, and they stepped inside. The ride up was silent. When the doors opened again, Elion blinked. They weren't in an office building. They were in an apartment. Sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that probably cost more than Elion's annual salary. "Sit," Darius said, gesturing toward a couch. Elion didn't move. Darius sighed, running a hand through his platinum hair. "Please." Elion sat. Milo stayed glued to his side. Cade disappeared into another room, and Jace stood by the window, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Darius lowered himself into a chair across from Elion, his elbows resting on his knees, and for the first time he looked tired. "You're not safe at your apartment," Darius said. "Someone knows where you live, knows your schedule, knows your son." Elion's chest tightened. He typed quickly. "Why?" "Because," Darius said slowly, "you saw something you weren't supposed to see." Elion's mind raced back to that day. Milo wandering into Sector 4, the door that shouldn't have been open, the men inside speaking freely because they thought no one was listening. "I didn't see anything," he typed. Milo was just lost. "But he wasn't," Jace said from the window. His voice was colder than his brother's. "He was brought there. Someone left that door open. Someone wanted him to see." Elion's hands stilled. Darius leaned forward, his pale eyes locked on Elion's face. "You're being framed. Someone is using you as a scapegoat for data breaches, financial irregularities, things that could bring down half the city's infrastructure." He paused. "And if they succeed, you'll take the fall." Elion's stomach twisted. "Why me?" "Because you're easy to erase," Jace said bluntly. "A mute omega with no family, no support, no one who'd ask questions. You're invisible." The words hit like a slap. Elion's jaw tightened, and he forced himself to breathe, forced himself not to react. Cade reappeared carrying a tablet. He set it on the coffee table in front of Elion and tapped the screen. "This is what they have on you." Elion stared at the screen. File after file of access logs, timestamps, security footage. All of it showing his face, his badge, his credentials. None of it real. His hands shook as he picked up the tablet, scrolling through the evidence, and his chest felt tight, his breathing shallow. "I didn't do any of this." "We know," Darius said. Elion looked up sharply. "Then why?" "Because we need proof," Cade interrupted. "And right now, all the proof points to you." Elion's vision blurred. He set the tablet down before he dropped it and pressed his hands against his face, trying to think, trying to breathe. Milo climbed into his lap, his small hands patting Elion's cheeks, and Elion forced himself to lower his hands and meet his son's eyes. "It's okay," Milo signed. "I'm here." Elion's chest cracked open. Darius stood, and Elion tensed, but the Alpha didn't approach. Instead, he moved toward the window, his hands shoved into his pockets, and stared out at the city. "We can protect you," he said quietly. "Both of you, but we need your help." Elion's fingers moved across his phone. "How?" Darius turned, and the look in his eyes was intense, almost desperate. "Let us in. Trust us. Work with us to find who's doing this." Elion's jaw tightened. "Why should I trust you?" The room went silent. Jace's expression didn't change, but Cade looked away, and Darius's face softened just slightly. "Because," Darius said, his voice rough, "if we wanted to hurt you, we already would have." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Elion stared at him, his mind racing, and he wanted to argue, wanted to call him a liar, wanted to grab Milo and run, but he had nowhere to go. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He looked down at the screen, and his blood turned to ice. A message. Unknown number. A photo attached. His apartment. His front door. Open. The text below was short. "We're waiting." Elion's hands trembled so badly the phone nearly slipped from his grip. He turned the screen toward Darius, his chest tight, his pulse roaring. Darius's expression darkened. He grabbed his own phone and barked orders into it, his voice sharp and controlled. Cade moved toward the door. "I'll send a team." "No," Jace interrupted. His eyes were on Elion. "It's already too late." Darius ended his call and turned back to Elion, his jaw tight. "You're staying here, both of you, until we figure this out." Elion wanted to argue, wanted to demand they take him home, that he could handle this himself. But Milo was in his lap, small and warm and fragile, and Elion knew he couldn't protect him alone. He typed slowly, his hands still shaking. "For how long?" Darius's eyes met his, and something flickered there, regret, maybe, or guilt. "As long as it takes." "Who do you run to when nowhere feels safe?" Elion didn't sleep. The guest bedroom was too big, too clean, with sheets that smelled like expensive detergent and pillows that felt like clouds. Milo had fallen asleep almost immediately, his small body curled against Elion's side, his breathing soft and steady. But Elion lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. His apartment was compromised. His job was a lie. His entire life had been built on quicksand, and now it was collapsing beneath him. At 3 a.m., he gave up and slipped out of bed. Milo didn't stir. Elion pulled the blanket up to the boy's chin, pressed a kiss to his forehead, and stepped into the hallway. The apartment was silent. He moved quietly, his bare feet soundless on the hardwood, and made his way toward the kitchen. He needed water, needed something to do with his hands. He didn't expect to find Darius sitting at the island. The Alpha looked up when Elion entered, his pale eyes reflecting the dim light from the stove hood. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand. His posture relaxed, but his expression anything but. "Couldn't sleep?" Darius asked quietly. Elion hesitated, then shook his head. Darius gestured to the seat beside him. "Join me." Elion's instincts told him to refuse, to go back to the bedroom and lock the door. But something in Darius's expression stopped him. Something raw, almost vulnerable. He sat. Darius poured a second glass of whiskey and slid it across the counter. Elion stared at it for a moment before picking it up. The liquid burned going down, and he grimaced. Darius's lips twitched. "Not a drinker?" Elion shook his head again. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator. Elion's fingers drummed against the counter, his mind still spinning, and he could feel Darius watching him. Finally, Darius spoke. "You're wondering why we're doing this?" Elion's eyes flicked to him, and he nodded slowly. Darius took a long drink, his gaze distant. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure." Elion pulled out his phone, his fingers moving across the screen. "That's not reassuring." Darius huffed a quiet laugh. "No, I suppose it's not. He set his glass down, his expression sobering. My brothers and I, we've spent our entire lives in control, managing chaos, keeping things balanced. He paused. And then you walked into that hallway with your son, and everything shifted. Elion's chest tightened. Why? Darius's eyes met his, and the intensity there made Elion's breath catch. Because you didn't bow. You didn't flinch. You stood there, holding your child, and you looked at us like we were just men. Elion's jaw tightened. You are just men. Darius smiled faintly. Not to most people. The silence stretched between them, heavy and loaded. Elion's fingers moved again. What do you want from me? Darius's expression darkened. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the counter, and Elion could smell his scent now. Cedar and smoke, overwhelming in the small space. Honestly, Darius said, his voice low, I don't know that either. Elion's pulse quickened. He forced himself to hold Darius's gaze, even as his instincts screamed at him to look away. Darius's hand moved, slow and deliberate, and his fingers brushed against Elion's wrist. Elion froze. The touch was light, barely there, but it burned. His skin prickled, his breathing shallow, and he couldn't look away from where their skin met. Darius's thumb traced a small circle against Elion's pulse point, and Elion's heart slammed against his ribs. You're afraid of us, Darius said quietly. It wasn't a question. Elion nodded. You should be. The words should have terrified him. Instead, they sent a shiver down his spine. Darius's hand lingered for a moment longer before pulling away, and Elion exhaled shakily. But, Darius continued, his voice softer now, we're not going to hurt you, or your son. He paused. That's a promise. Elion wanted to believe him, wanted to trust the sincerity in his eyes, the gentleness in his touch. But trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. He typed slowly. What happens now? Darius leaned back, running a hand through his hair. Now we figure out who's targeting you. And we stop them. And then, Darius's eyes met his again, and something unreadable flickered there. And then, we'll see. The next morning, Elion woke to the smell of pancakes. He sat up quickly, his heart racing, and realized Milo wasn't beside him. Panic surged through his chest, and he bolted out of bed, his bare feet hitting the floor hard as he ran toward the kitchen. Milo sat at the island, swinging his legs, a plate of pancakes in front of him. Cade stood at the stove, flipping another pancake with practiced ease, and Milo was giggling. Actually giggling, at something Cade had said. Elion stopped in the doorway, his chest tight. Cade looked up and smiled faintly. Morning. Hungry. Elion's hands clenched at his sides. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Milo into his arms, his pulse still racing. Milo squirmed, his small hands signing quickly. I'm okay, Papa. He made pancakes. Elion's jaw tightened. He looked at Cade, his expression hard, and typed out a message. Don't take him without asking. Cade's smile faded. I didn't. He came out on his own. I figured breakfast was safer than letting him wander. Elion didn't respond. He set Milo back on the stool, his hands shaking slightly, and forced himself to breathe. Cade slid a plate across the counter. Eat. You'll feel better. Elion stared at the pancakes, his stomach twisting, but Milo tugged on his arm, his small face pleading. He sat down. They ate in silence, and Elion tried to ignore the way Cade watched him, his expression unreadable. Later that afternoon, Jace summoned him to the living room. The other 2 triplets were already there, seated around a coffee table covered in files and laptops. Jace gestured to an empty chair, and Elion sat, his phone clutched in his hands. We need to talk about your options, Jace said without preamble. Elion's chest tightened. Options? Protection, Darius said. Long-term. For you and Milo. Elion's hands stilled. Cade leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. We can relocate you. New city, new identity. You'd be safe. Elion's mind raced. He typed quickly. And Milo? He'd come with you, Darius said. We'd make sure he's enrolled in a good school, that you have stable income, that... And you? Elion interrupted. Where would you be? The room went quiet. Darius's jaw tightened. We'd stay here. Our work doesn't allow us to leave. Elion's chest felt tight. He looked between the three men, their identical faces, their unreadable expressions, and something in him cracked. So you're asking me to disappear? We're asking you to be safe, Jay said. Elion's hands shook as he typed. That's not the same thing. Darius stood, his movements controlled but tense. Then what do you want? Elion stared at him, his throat tight, and the answer burned on the tip of his tongue. I want to stay. The words hung in the air, impossible and dangerous. Darius's eyes widened slightly. That's not. I want to help you find who did this, Elion typed. I want to make sure they can't do it to anyone else. You'll be putting yourself at risk, Kate said quietly. I'm already at risk. Jace leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. If you stay, you'd have to follow our rules. Stay here. Let us protect you. No going anywhere without one of us. Elion's jaw tightened. For how long? Until it's over, Darius said. Elion looked at Milo, who was playing quietly in the corner, his small hands moving toy cars across the floor. The boy looked up, met Elion's eyes, and smiled. Elion's chest ached. He typed slowly. What if I agree? Darius's expression shifted. Something like relief, something like fear. Then we'll keep you safe. Both of you. He paused. But there's something else. Elion's pulse quickened. What? Darius exchanged a glance with his brothers, and Cade nodded slightly. We'd need you to bond with us, Darius said quietly. Officially, it's the only way to ensure your legal protection. The only way to keep you and Milo untouchable. Elion's breath stopped. Bond? Not immediately, Cade added quickly. But eventually, it would give you rights, resources, safety. Elion's hands shook. And what would you get? The question hung in the air, sharp and pointed. Darius's eyes met his, and the vulnerability there was staggering. You, he said simply. Elion's world tilted. Before he could respond, Milo appeared at his side, his small hands tugging on Elion's sleeve. He signed quickly, his face serious. Papa, are we staying? Elion stared at his son, at the hope in his eyes, and his chest cracked open. He looked back at Darius, at the three men who'd turned his life upside down, and typed out a single word. Maybe. That night, as Elion lay in bed with Milo curled against him, his phone buzzed. He picked it up, his heart already racing, and stared at the message. We meant what we said. You're safe here. Another message followed immediately. But if you choose to stay, there's no going back. Elion's hands trembled as he typed out a response. I know. He hit send and turned off his phone. Outside, the city glittered, and somewhere in the darkness, danger waited. But for the first time in years, Elion felt like he had a choice. Would you risk everything for a chance at something real? Or would you walk away while you still could? The documentation started small. Elion sat at the desk in the guest bedroom, his laptop open, Milo asleep in the bed behind him. His fingers moved across the keyboard slowly at first, then faster as the pieces began to fall into place. He wasn't documenting people. He was documenting systems, procurement loops that circled back on themselves, tax shelters hidden in subsidiary companies, safety violations buried under layers of corporate bureaucracy. None of it was dramatic. None of it would make headlines. But all of it was illegal. Elion worked through the night, his eyes burning, his hands cramping. He copied files onto an encrypted drive, cross-referenced dates and signatures, built a timeline that couldn't be ignored. By morning, he had enough to bury half the city's infrastructure, and he had no idea what to do with it. Darius found him at dawn, still sitting at the desk, his head in his hands. You didn't sleep, Darius said quietly. Elion looked up, his eyes red-rimmed, and shook his head. Darius crossed the room, his movements careful, and crouched beside the chair. His eyes scanned the laptop screen, and his expression darkened. "What is this?" Elion's fingers moved across his phone. "Proof that I didn't do any of this. That someone else did." Darius's jaw tightened. "You can't." "I have to," Elion typed, "or I'll never be free." Darius stared at him, something like fear flickering in his eyes. "If you release this, there will be consequences. For all of us." "I know." Elion, the sound of his name, spoken out loud for the first time, made Elion's breath catch. His hands stilled on his phone, and he looked up at Darius, his chest tight. Darius's hand moved, slow and deliberate, and his palm cupped Elion's face. The touch was gentle, too gentle. Elion's skin burned where their skin met, and he couldn't look away from Darius's eyes. "Don't do this," Darius whispered. Elion's hands trembled. He typed slowly, "Give me a reason not to." Darius's thumb traced along Elion's cheekbone, and his eyes dropped to Elion's mouth. The air between them felt electric, charged with something Elion didn't have a name for. "Because," Darius said, his voice rough, "if you do this, you'll be putting yourself in more danger than we can protect you from. Then let me go." Darius's hand stilled. His eyes snapped back to Elion's, and something broke in his expression. "I can't." The words hung between them, raw and honest. Elion's chest ached. He wanted to lean into that touch, wanted to let himself believe that someone could want him enough to keep him safe. But safety had always been a lie. He pulled away gently, and Darius's hand dropped. "I'm sorry," Elion typed. Darius stood slowly, his expression shuddered. "So am I." That afternoon, child services called again. Elion stared at his phone, his stomach twisting, and finally answered. He put the call on speaker, his fingers ready on his phone's notepad. "Mr. Cross." Amanda Reeves's voice was clipped. "We need to schedule a follow-up visit. There have been additional concerns raised about your living situation." Elion's hands shook as he typed. Darius appeared in the doorway, his expression dark, and gestured for the phone. Elion hesitated, then handed it over. "This is Darius Virex," Darius said, his voice cold and controlled. "Mr. Cross is currently under my protection due to security concerns. Any visits will need to be coordinated through our legal team." Amanda's silence stretched. "Mr. Virex, I'm not sure you understand the severity." "I understand perfectly," Darius interrupted. "And I'm telling you that if you continue to harass my Omega without proper cause, I'll have my lawyers file a complaint with your supervisor. Are we clear?" The line went dead. Elion stared at Darius, his chest tight. "Your Omega?" Darius's jaw clenched. It was the fastest way to get her to back off. "That's not an answer." Darius met his eyes, and something vulnerable flickered there. "No, it's not." Before Elion could respond, Kate appeared in the doorway. "We have a problem," he said quietly. They gathered in the living room, all three brothers, Elion, and the laptop containing everything Elion had documented. Jace paced near the windows, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and tense. Cade sat on the arm of the couch, his expression grim. Darius stood beside Elion, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Someone knows you're here," Jace said, ending his call. "They sent a message to our secure line. They know you have the files." Elion's blood ran cold. "How?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Kate said. Darius's hand found Elion's shoulder, and the weight of it was grounding. "We need to move you again, somewhere they can't track." Elion shook his head. He typed quickly, "No more running. I'm sending the files." "You'll be killed," Jace said bluntly. "Then protect me." The room went silent. Darius's grip on Elion's shoulder tightened. "If we do this, if we help you, there's no going back. For any of us." Elion looked up at him, his jaw set. "I know." Cade stood, his expression resolute. "Then we do it right. We send the files to regulators, not the press. We keep it legal, clean." Jace nodded slowly. "And we prepare for war." Elion's hands trembled as he opened his laptop. He pulled up the encrypted drive, his finger hovering over the send button. Milo appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked at the four of them, his small face confused, and signed a question. "What's happening?" Elion's chest cracked open. He crossed the room and pulled his son into his arms, burying his face in Milo's hair. "We're fighting back," he signed against Milo's shoulder. Milo pulled back, his eyes serious. "Will we win?" Elion's throat tightened. "I don't know." Milo's small hand found his, squeezing tight. "Then let's try." Elion looked back at the three brothers, at the men who'd turned his life upside down, and nodded. He hit send. The world didn't end immediately, but somewhere in the city, phones started ringing. Emails started landing in inboxes, and the carefully constructed balance of power began to crack. That night, Darius found Elion on the balcony. The city stretched out below them, glittering and cold, and Elion leaned against the railing, his arms crossed against the chill. Darius stood beside him, silent for a long time. "I meant what I said earlier," Darius finally spoke. "About you being mine." Elion's breath caught. He pulled out his phone. "I'm not anyone's." "I know," Darius said quietly. "But I want you to be." Elion's hands shook. "Why?" Darius turned to face him, and the vulnerability in his eyes was staggering. "Because you're the first person in my entire life who's looked at me and seen someone worth standing up to." Elion's chest ached. "I'm just trying to survive." "No," Darius said. "You're trying to live. There's a difference." His hand reached out, slow and careful, and his fingers brushed against Elion's. Elion didn't pull away. They stood there, hands almost touching. The city spread out below them, and for the first time, Elion allowed himself to wonder what it might feel like to choose something instead of just surviving it. What would you sacrifice to live instead of just survive? The first call came at 3 a.m. Elion jerked awake to the sound of Darius's phone ringing, the harsh tone cutting through the silence. He sat up, his heart pounding, and heard voices in the hallway, low, tense, urgent. Milo stirred beside him but didn't wake. Elion slipped out of bed and cracked open the door. All three brothers stood in the living room, their faces illuminated by laptop screens and phone lights. Jace was on a call, his voice sharp. Cade typed furiously on his computer. Darius paced, his hand running through his hair. "How many?" Darius asked. 7 companies so far," Cade replied. "Investigations launched. Assets frozen. The SEC is moving faster than we expected." Elion's chest tightened. His files, his evidence, it was working, but the expressions on their faces told him the cost was higher than he'd imagined. Darius looked up and saw him in the doorway. His expression softened slightly. "Go back to bed." Elion shook his head. He crossed the room, his phone clutched in his hand. "What's happening?" Cade turned his laptop around. Headlines scrolled across the screen: federal investigations, corporate fraud, systems exposure. None of it mentioned Elion's name. None of it pointed to him, but the fallout was spreading like wildfire. "Contracts are being pulled," Jace said, ending his call. "Partnerships dissolved. We're losing leverage." Darius's jaw tightened. "How bad?" "Bad enough that we'll need to restructure everything," Cade said quietly. "It'll take months, maybe years." Elion's hands trembled. "I'm sorry." Darius crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands found Elion's shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. "Don't apologize," he said, his voice rough. "You did the right thing, but you're losing everything." "We're losing control," Darius corrected. "There's a difference." Elion's throat tightened. He wanted to believe that, wanted to believe the cost wouldn't break them. But the exhaustion in Darius's eyes told a different story. The calls didn't stop. Over the next 48 hours, Elion watched the triplets' world slowly dismantle. Meetings canceled, allies withdrawing. The carefully constructed empire they'd built beginning to crumble under scrutiny. And through it all, they protected him. Security doubled. Milo wasn't allowed to leave the apartment. Elion's phone was monitored, his movements tracked, His life reduced to 4 walls and 3 men who refused to let him go. On the 3rd day, Elion's termination letter arrived. Not in person, not with an explanation. Just an email, clinical and cold, informing him that his employment had been terminated effective immediately due to policy violations. Elion stared at the screen, his chest hollow. He'd known it was coming, had expected it, but seeing the words made it real in a way nothing else had. He was unemployed, blacklisted, his reputation destroyed. Cade found him sitting at the kitchen counter, the email still open on his phone. "I'm sorry," Cade said quietly. Elion didn't look up. He typed slowly. "It was worth it. Was it?" Elion's hands stilled. He looked up at Cade, at the genuine concern in his eyes, and his throat tightened. "Ask me in a year." Cade's lips twitched into a faint smile. Fair enough. That evening, Darius came to him alone. Elion was on the balcony again, staring out at the city, when he heard footsteps behind him. "You keep coming out here," Darius said. Elion glanced over his shoulder and shrugged. Darius moved to stand beside him, his hands resting on the railing. They stood in silence for a long time, the wind cold against their skin. "I need to ask you something," Darius finally said. Elion's pulse quickened. He pulled out his phone. "What?" Darius turned to face him, and the vulnerability in his expression made Elion's breath catch. "Did you ever consider choosing us?" Darius asked quietly. "Not because you had to, not because you were scared, but because you wanted to." Elion's hands trembled. The question hung between them, raw and impossible. He thought about the first day he'd seen them, the fear that had gripped him, the way they'd looked at Milo with something that might have been protectiveness or possession. He still wasn't sure. He thought about the way Darius's hand had cupped his face, the way Cade had made pancakes for his son, the way Jace had spoken to child services with a coldness that had made Elion feel safe. He typed slowly, "I don't know." Darius's expression cracked. "That's not a no. It's not a yes either." Darius exhaled shakily. His hand moved toward Elion's face, then stopped, hovering in the space between them. "Can I?" He stopped, his jaw tight. "Can I touch you?" Elion's chest ached. The question was so careful, so deliberate, and it broke something inside him. He nodded. Darius's hand cupped his face, and Elion's eyes fluttered closed. The touch was gentle, reverent, and Elion leaned into it before he could stop himself. "I don't know how to do this," Darius whispered. "How to want someone without taking." Elion's eyes opened. "Then learn." Darius's thumb traced along his cheekbone, and his eyes were so close, his breath warm against Elion's skin. "Teach me," Darius breathed. Elion's heart slammed against his ribs. He wanted to close the distance, wanted to find out what it felt like to choose something for himself instead of just surviving. But Milo's voice called from inside, small and sleepy, and the moment shattered. Elion pulled back gently, and Darius's hand dropped. "I need to check on him." Darius nodded, his expression unreadable. "Of course." Elion walked back inside, his chest tight, and didn't look back. But he felt Darius's eyes on him the entire way. Can you learn to trust someone who started as your cage? Life became smaller after that. Elion's days blurred together. Mornings with Milo, afternoons watching the news coverage of investigations he'd triggered, evenings sitting in silence while the triplets worked to salvage what was left of their world. He didn't leave the apartment, couldn't leave. Every time he looked out the window, he imagined eyes watching, waiting. But slowly, something shifted. Milo laughed more. The tension in the apartment eased. And Elion found himself noticing small things, the way Cade always made extra coffee in the morning, the way Jace left books on the counter that he thought Elion might like, the way Darius checked on them before bed every night. They weren't perfect. They were controlling, overbearing, used to getting their way. But they were trying. One afternoon, Elion found Milo in the living room with Jace, building a tower out of blocks. He stopped in the doorway, watching silently as his son giggled, and Jace, cold, intimidating Jace, smiled. Jace looked up and caught Elion's eyes. His smile faded, replaced by something more careful. He asked me to play, Jace said quietly. Elion's throat tightened. He nodded. Milo looked up and signed quickly. Papa, look, we made it taller than me. Elion crossed the room and sat beside them, and Milo immediately climbed into his lap. Jace's eyes lingered on them for a moment before returning to the blocks. They played in silence, and for the first time in weeks, Elion felt something like peace. That night, Darius found him in the kitchen again. It had become their routine. Late nights, quiet conversations, the city glittering beyond the windows. Darius poured 2 glasses of whiskey and slid one across the counter. "You're getting better at this," he said. Elion raised an eyebrow. "At what?" "Being here, with us." Elion's chest tightened. He took a sip of whiskey, grimacing at the burn. "I don't have much choice." "You always have a choice," Darius said softly. Elion looked up at him, and the sincerity in Darius's eyes made his breath catch. "Do I?" Darius set his glass down and moved around the counter. He stopped in front of Elion, close enough that Elion could feel his warmth, and his hand came up slowly. This time, Elion didn't pull away. Darius's palm pressed against his chest, right over his heart, and his eyes locked on Elion's. "You could leave tomorrow," Darius said quietly. "Take Milo, disappear. We wouldn't stop you." Elion's hands trembled. "You're lying." "I'm not." Darius's hand pressed a little harder, and Elion could feel his own heartbeat against Darius's palm. "But I'm asking you to stay." "Why?" "Because I don't want to go back to who I was before you." The words hit Elion like a blow. His throat tightened, his chest aching, and he couldn't look away from Darius's eyes. "What if I break you?" Darius's lips curved into a faint, sad smile. "Then at least I felt something real." Elion's hands moved to cover Darius's, pressing it harder against his chest, and they stood there in the dim kitchen light, neither of them moving, neither of them breathing. Finally, Elion pulled back gently. "I need time." Darius nodded, his hand dropping. "Take all the time you need." But his eyes said something different. They said, "Please don't take too long." A week later, a sealed envelope arrived. Jace brought it to Elion, his expression unreadable. "It's from a law firm. They want to meet with you." Elion's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single page, a job offer, consulting work, remote, well paid, and a handwritten note at the bottom. "You deserve a second chance. D." Elion stared at the note, his vision blurring, and his chest felt too full. He looked up at Jace. "Did you know about this?" Jace nodded slowly. "Darius set it up. He didn't want you to feel trapped." Elion's throat tightened. "Tell him thank you." Jace's expression softened. "Tell him yourself." That night, Milo asked him a question. They were lying in bed, Milo's small body tucked against Elion's side, when the boy's hands began to move. "Are we staying forever?" Elion's chest ached. He signed back carefully. "I don't know. Do you want to?" Elion's hands stilled. He stared at his son, at the hope in his eyes, and his throat felt tight. Maybe he finally signed. Milo smiled and curled closer. "Good. I like it here." Elion pulled him tight and closed his eyes. Outside, the city breathed, and somewhere in the apartment, 3 men waited for an answer Elion still didn't know how to give. When does surviving become living? The second proposal came on a Sunday morning. Elion was making coffee when all 3 brothers walked into the kitchen together. Their expressions were serious, identical, and Elion's stomach dropped. He set down his mug slowly. Darius spoke first. "We need to talk." Elion's hands moved to his phone, but Cade shook his head. "Just listen first," Cade said gently. Elion's jaw tightened, but he nodded. The 3 of them exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them, and then Darius stepped forward. "The investigations are wrapping up," he said. "Most of the charges are sticking. The systems you exposed are being reformed." He paused. "You were right, and it cost us everything we built." Elion's chest tightened with guilt. "But," Jace continued, his voice softer than usual, It also gave us something we didn't know we needed. What? Clarity, Cade said simply. Darius moved closer, and Elion's pulse quickened. We want to ask you again. Not because we need to protect you legally. Not because we want to control you, but because we want you to stay. Elion's hands trembled as he reached for his phone. Stay how? As our partner, Darius said. Our equal. He stopped, his jaw tight. Our Omega, if you'll have us. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Elion's vision blurred. He typed quickly. Without conditions. Without conditions, Cade confirmed. What about Milo? He's part of this, Jace said quietly. We're not asking you to choose between us and him. We're asking to be part of both your lives. Elion's throat felt impossibly tight. He looked between the three of them. These men who'd terrified him, protected him, changed everything. I don't know if I can trust this, he typed. Then don't, Darius said. His hand reached out slowly, hovering near Elion's. Not yet. Just give us the chance to earn it. Elion stared at his hand, at the space between them, and his heart hammered against his ribs. I need time, he typed finally. Relief flickered across all three faces. Take all the time you need, Darius said softly, but his hand stayed there, waiting, and after a long moment, Elion's fingers brushed against his. The touch was brief, barely there, but it was a start. Later that day, Elion took Milo to the park. Not alone. Cade came with them, a silent presence that made Elion feel safer than he wanted to admit. Milo ran ahead, laughing, chasing pigeons across the grass, and Elion sat on a bench, watching him with an ache in his chest. Cade sat beside him, close but not touching. He's happy, Cade said quietly. Elion nodded. Are you? Elion's hands stilled. He pulled out his phone. I don't know what that feels like anymore. Cade was quiet for a moment. Then maybe we can figure it out together. Elion looked at him, at the genuine warmth in his eyes, and something in his chest cracked. Why do you care? Because, Cade said softly, you make us better. Elion's throat tightened. He looked back at Milo, at his son's joy, and typed slowly. I'll think about it. Cade smiled. That's all we're asking. That evening, Elion sat down and wrote a list. Things he needed. Things he wanted. Boundaries he wouldn't cross. He showed it to Darius that night, his hands shaking. Darius read it slowly, his expression serious, and when he finished, he looked up at Elion with something like awe. We can do this, he said quietly. All of it. You promise? I promise. Elion's chest ached. I need time to decide. I know, Darius said. He reached out slowly and took Elion's hand. But know this, whether you choose us or not, we're not going anywhere. You and Milo will always be protected. Always be safe. That's not conditional. Elion's vision blurred. Why? Darius's thumb traced circles on his palm. Because you deserve it. That night, Elion dreamed of possibilities. Of a future that wasn't just survival. Of hands that held instead of trapped. Of a home that felt like choice instead of cage. When he woke, Milo was pressed against his side, and sunlight streamed through the windows. And for the first time in years, Elion let himself hope. Is safety worth the risk of letting someone in? Elion stood at the apartment's window, watching the city wake up below him. 3 weeks had passed since the second proposal. 3 weeks of careful conversations and hesitant touches and slow, terrifying hope. Milo was thriving. He laughed more, slept better, asked fewer worried questions. The triplets had enrolled him in a private school, one with security and support and teachers who understood sign language. Elion had started the consulting job. The work was good, challenging, and it felt like his. Not something given out of pity, but something earned. And the triplets, they waited. Not impatiently, not desperately. They just existed around him, giving him space while making it clear they weren't going anywhere. Darius found him at the window as the sun rose higher. Couldn't sleep? Darius asked quietly. Elion shook his head. Darius moved to stand beside him, their shoulders almost touching, and they watched the city in silence. "I've been thinking," Elion finally typed. Darius's breath caught. About what you asked me." Darius turned to face him, and the vulnerability in his eyes was staggering. "And?" Elion's hands trembled as he typed. "I'm not ready yet." Something broke in Darius's expression, but he nodded. "Okay, but..." Elion continued, his chest tight. "I'm not saying no either." Hope flickered across Darius's face. "I need to see if this is real," Elion typed. "If you can keep your promises. If I can trust this." "How long?" Darius asked softly. "I don't know." Darius was quiet for a long moment. Then his hand came up slowly, and his fingers brushed against Elion's cheek. "Take all the time you need," he whispered. "We're not going anywhere." Elion leaned into the touch, just slightly, and let himself believe it might be true. Later that morning, the four of them, Elion, Milo, and all three brothers, sat down to breakfast together. It was simple: pancakes and eggs and coffee. Nothing special. But Milo was laughing at something Cade said, and Jace was smiling, and Darius kept glancing at Elion with something soft in his eyes. And Elion realized this felt like family. Not perfect, not simple, but real. After breakfast, Darius pulled him aside. "There's something I need to show you," he said. He led Elion to a room at the end of the hall, one Elion had never entered before. Inside was an office, clean, organized, with a desk by the window and shelves for books. "It's yours," Darius said quietly. "If you want it. A space that's just yours. No cameras, no monitoring, just yours." Elion's throat tightened. He walked slowly into the room, his fingers trailing along the desk, and his chest felt too full. "Why?" "Because you deserve privacy," Darius said. "Autonomy. A life that's yours, even if you choose to share it with us." Elion turned to face him, and tears burned in his eyes. "Thank you," he typed. Darius smiled, soft and genuine. "You're welcome." That afternoon, while Milo napped and the brothers worked in their own office, Elion sat at his new desk and stared out at the city. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. His chest tightened, old fear rising, but when he opened it, he exhaled slowly. It was from the law firm that had offered him the consulting job. "Your first project impressed the client. They want to continue working with you. You're building something good." Elion stared at the message, his vision blurring. He was building something good, not just surviving, building. That evening, the triplets asked if they could take Milo to the park. Elion hesitated, old instincts screaming, but Milo's excited signing and the genuine warmth in the brothers' eyes made him nod. "We'll be back in an hour," Cade promised. Elion watched them leave, his son between three powerful men who'd once terrified him, now laughing and holding their hands. And he was alone in the apartment for the first time in weeks. The silence was overwhelming. He walked through the room slowly, touching surfaces, breathing deeply, feeling the space around him. This could be home, he realized, if he let it be. When they returned, Milo ran to him immediately, his small face flushed and happy, signing rapidly about the ducks they'd seen and the ice cream Jace had bought him. Elion pulled him close, breathing in his scent, and looked up at the three brothers watching them. Darius stepped forward slowly. "Can we talk?" Elion's pulse quickened, but he nodded. They sat in the living room, all five of them, and the weight of the moment pressed down on Elion's chest. "We want you to know," Darius started, his voice careful, "that whatever you decide, we respect it. If you want to leave, we'll help you relocate. If you want to stay but keep distance, we'll give it. And if you want..." He stopped, his jaw tight. "If you want to try this, we're here." Elion's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. "I'm scared," he typed. "We know," Cade said gently. "What if I can't do this?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Jace said. Elion looked at Milo, at his son's trusting eyes, and then back at the three men who'd become something he didn't have a name for yet. "I want to try," he typed slowly, "but I need you to understand. I'm choosing this, not because I'm trapped, Not because I have no other options, but because I want to. All three brothers exhaled simultaneously, relief and something deeper flooding their expressions. That's all we've ever wanted, Darius said, his voice rough. Elion's vision blurred. I'm still scared. Darius moved closer, kneeling in front of him, and his hand came up to cup Elion's face. So am I, Darius whispered, and then, slowly, carefully, giving Elion every chance to pull away, Darius leaned forward. Their foreheads pressed together. Not a kiss, not yet, just closeness. Just breath shared between them. Elion's eyes closed, and for the first time he let himself feel it. The warmth, the safety, the possibility of something more. When Darius pulled back, his eyes were bright. Thank you, he breathed. Elion's hands shook as he typed. For what? For giving us a chance. That night, after Milo was asleep, Elion stood on the balcony one last time. The city glittered below, full of danger and possibility, and behind him, three men waited, patient, imperfect, trying. He didn't know what the future held, didn't know if this fragile thing they were building would last. But for the first time in his life, Elion realized he wanted to find out. He turned away from the railing and walked back inside. Darius looked up when he entered, something hopeful in his eyes. Elion crossed the room slowly and held out his hand. Darius stared at it for a long moment before taking it. Their fingers intertwined, and Elion squeezed gently. I'm staying, he typed with his free hand. Darius's breath caught. You're sure? Elion looked at him, really looked at him, and nodded. I'm sure. And in that moment, surrounded by possibility and fear and hope, Elion Cross made a choice. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The triplets stood, and one by one, they moved closer. Not crowding, just present. Cade's hand found Elion's shoulder. Jace's fingers brushed his wrist. Darius's forehead pressed against his once more. We'll do this right, Darius promised. Whatever that means for you. Elion's throat tightened, but he nodded. Outside, the city breathed. Inside, a family began. Not perfect, not simple, but theirs. And for the first time in years, Elion believed that maybe, just maybe, he deserved this. The story doesn't end here. It's just beginning. What would you choose? Familiar loneliness or terrifying hope? The end.